Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
But I did not get one to Mr. Rose, and if he would be involved in it, this is fine. What I did is I wanted to submit these two comparables, or these two comparisons that are basically in the same general area, and I discussed this at the prior meeting. And the first one I wrote on top is 17.5 acres. It's zoned ag homestead.
Mm-hmm.
The second one is 10 acres, zoned ag non-homestead, both to be rezoned, at least that's what the proposal is, to R3. Well, how can this 17 acres possibly be rezoned to R3 and still be ag homestead? It can't be.
You're right.
And therefore, this will be, and if you look at the difference in the tax values, the tax amounts of the two parcels, it's incredibly surprising at how much it does differ, and that's my big concern. The 10 acres is going to be taxed at $2,964 in 2010. That's the proposal. If you want to go back to 2009, we can do that because that was realistically what we paid last year, and we can do that. We paid $3,555. For the 17 acres, we paid $744 because we were able to homestead it because we live nearby on ag homestead property. It's a very complicated government method that it's a little even over my head, but I'm getting quite educated on these things.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
from what you're saying, you're looking at the classification. The classification is not the same as the zoning. Correct?
Correct.
Zoning is a separate issue from classification. It's not going to change your classification from anything. It's still going to be classified ag. It'll still be classified ag homestead, I would think.
Non-homestead.
That's not going to change your classification on it according to that letter,
As long as it's still being used ag.
as long as you use it as ag. The classification has nothing to do with the zoning.
got anything for us, Mr. Vols? We started this while you were out of the room.
Yeah.
Apologies.
Mayor and council, and I apologize for stepping out.
Yep.
Property classification on the tax invoice, I believe, I don't want to speak for the county, but I believe refers to how the property is being used, at least the ag portion. The homestead or not, obviously, as gentleman indicates, a little more complicated than that. But how the property is classified for county taxation purposes is based on use. Now, it is true what Ms. Rosenfeld read, when land is unimproved, which ag land is effectively unimproved, it could theoretically be recharacterized by the county to be unimproved commercial property, for example. That seems unlikely, though, when we're talking about the classification changing from ag, being used as ag, to residential. I think that's unlikely, but, you know, folks should talk to the county about how it's going to change if they want to know for sure. But property classification on the tax sheet refers to use.
Okay. Mr. Murphy?
Mr. Mayor, council members, take this for what it's worth. It's been close to 7 years since I actually worked in an assessor's office. I did do some continuing work on the side after I started, but to me, looking at this, the big difference between the two parcels and why this one probably is valued quite a bit higher, even though it's 10 acres rather than the 17.5 acres that it's there, is that the first parcel, the 17.5 acres, is a meets and bounds open description of 17.5 acres, whereas the next one is an outlot A, which is part of a subdivision, which is 10 acres, which then to assessor's office, which would tell them that that is the next phase in a residential subdivision or some sort of subdivision. So its highest and best use then would change from ag to residential or commercial or something like that. It's very, the way we, at least again, when I worked in the assessor's office back about 7 years ago, what that would have been looked at, it's very unlikely that an outlot would sell as an ag property, whereas a larger meets and bounds probably could. It definitely has that potential for that, but that's just a little bit of background. I mean, I don't mean to.
Right, and we can't, again, as Mr. Wolf said,
we can't speculate.
We can't speculate on what the county is going to do with this. And this is a county designation. our classification.
And I don't mean to complicate matters here again as well, but I think as we're all aware, you know, the county is, and no matter what happens with this, the county is in the process of looking at what classifies as ag and what classifies as ag homestead. They're redoing that countywide on that, so.
Yeah, they are. Yep.
So I mean, take it for what it's worth. The potential could be, even if we do nothing, it potentially could change. We don't know that until they really
Right.
go through and review it.
And that's certainly not in our purview here, which is basically what you're saying. We have no control over that.
Over that aspect of it,
Right.
that's correct.
Right.
And, excuse me,
Yep.
I guess my concern is that, again, I agree with you that you have no control over what the county does, but yet this is the city making this decision, and I certainly would think that you could understand my concern, especially being we have no intent for quite some time to do any developing of that parcel. If we did not have the 10 acres as a next phase, I would have not as much of a concern about this. And I'm not arguing about the 10 acres. That's a lot of tax for 10 acres of property also. However, I understand that that's my next phase, and I'm going to have to work into that. This one is a different story. Is there anyone that could give me any kind of a guarantee that I don't have to worry about this getting out of hand as far as real estate taxes, and that I'm going to feel more comfortable with the decision that the council makes?
Well, guarantee, I mean, we're interpreting this document that Ms. Rosenfeld read, and would you agree that it's somewhat vague? I mean, they're giving themselves, but when they talk about current use, and this is kind of what we talked about in this workshop, but we've walked away feeling pretty assured that current use, being ag homestead, in this case, it's designated as, or classified as that, would essentially stay that way. Now, does that letter make it sound like our conclusion is wrong? I mean, now that we have, because we didn't have that letter last week when we did this workshop.
Mr. Mayor, I did read that statement at the
You did?
first
We had that
council
one too?
meeting.
We had it
Okay.
at planning and zoning, we had it at the council meeting.
Okay.
I think we gotta get the county involved to have them back that up. That letter don't mean nothing. I understand it says what it says. But I think the county should help us with this,
Mr. Mayor?
if there's a problem with this.
Right? Is that it for?
To me, it seems that what's going to raise their interest in that property is if you go to attempt to plat. If you attempt to plat it, once you attempt to do anything to change that property into any kind of development, that raises their red flag and says, hey, I got to go out there and see what money I'm